Hey everyone, welcome back to Apollo Art Analysis. This episode, we'll be checking out a piece by the up-and-coming digital illustrator known as Emerson Miltenberger. This episode, we're going to be talking about the impact of form, we're going to talk about all these layers here, and we're also going to talk about the origins of the caves, so let's jump right into it. So whenever we first see this work, really made with quite a wide scene here, really a unique perspective as well. At first sight, you're likely struck by all these striking forms, right? And also the little bit of fluorescent green as well, certainly catches the eye in that initial introduction. So our perspective here is quite interesting, right? We have this kind of side scroller we can see both below and above as well, so really unique perspective in that first introduction. What you'll also notice are multiple layers of contrast, such as this light on dark contrast or the dark on light contrast, and then increasing complexity going away. Incredibly important here. And of course, accents form really pops out in front of us. So you notice about three main regions here. We have, definitely the underground, we have about the surface level, and then we have what appears to be mountains, trees, or some type of shelter above. I think that's really important here. This kind of divides the work and you kind of move from one to the other as the viewer. So in the realm of color, we have an analogous scheme. Of course, blue and green, those are going to be right next to each other on the color wheel. Incredibly nice colors that blend quite brilliantly, very natural colors as well. And what you'll see here, of course, the effect, it is quite bright as well. There is a lot of intensity of light, so that vibrance certainly touches the eye, invigorates the spatial composition with a bit of visual energy as well. That's also important to note. So what we notice here is kind of cartoonish style, right? Very classic style as well. And I see a bit of juxtaposition, and what I mean by that is you have this very cartoonish, kind of fun style, but you look at this and it's a bit darker, right? You have these much jagged forms, much darker composition, especially underground around the cave. So incredibly important here. They're kind of working off of each other in contrast. So I think that's pretty interesting. What you'll see here, of course, we talked a little bit about form, these kind of striking, really jagged forms, right? Even underground, when the water of these caves just kind of move through here, they do create these very sharp, kind of fragmented elements. It's quite interesting, right? The impact, of course, is very sharp. It's a little harsh, but it's not really too bad. It does add a bit of visual energy as well, so I think that's also important to note. And so after a short time at this work, you'll likely notice all these layers to the piece at hand, right? You first look at this. When I was looking at this work, I see, you could say something like 6 layers, right? We have, of course, the water as the very front. We have that kind of black backing. Then we go behind that. We have a little bit of a darker silhouette, yet another one, and then finally that kind of lightest green backing, right? Those multiple layers give this sense of depth, right? It also immerses us within the scene. I think that's incredibly important here. This gives us a sense of realism, of course, that is adding to that sense of immersion. And so what we see here, of course, we have all of these caves. They just kind of wind and go in all these incredibly dynamic forms, right? What you'll see here, they have these kind of little pockets, right? And these do seem like they're moving in some ways or another. You can certainly imagine the water kind of falling off into that and then disappearing underground, especially here, right? It goes out of our view. We kind of wonder where that is going. And caves are quite interesting, right? They're home to just a diverse range of animals, and they also originated about a millennia, well, some caves more than others, of course, but weathering deep underground by water. I think that's really interesting. It's a result of so much evolution, but more so kind of landscape evolution, right? Kind of an interesting way to think about that. And early humans really made use of caves in so many different ways. They used them as shelter, all the way to, kind of communal ceremonies, all the way to burial sites. I have a bit of Lascaux. We're going to look at that real quick. Some of the historic caves in France. See what we can learn real quick. And so I mentioned caves a little bit, right? This is certainly the theme of the work at hand. And these are going to be the caves at Lascaux, and this is going to be in France. So what's quite interesting, we talked a little bit about people using, or early humans, using caves as kind of religious ceremonies, all the way to communal gatherings, all the way to burial sites. And we see a few examples of that here, right? Art is quite interesting because it can create permanence, right? We are mortal beings who are not here forever, but art allows us to kind of live on in that way. So this is a really good example of that, kind of a communal ceremony aspect. You see all of these people kind of putting their hands onto that, and a very early kind of pigment paint used in that as well. Really interesting there. It's quite strange to just see the impact of humans so far ago. I believe it's dozens of thousands of years, if I'm correct. I may not be 100% on that, though. So when we look at this one, of course, you notice that instantly. Looks like a bird, certainly a very simple human. And then I believe this is going to be the Hall of Bulls. So I believe that is a bull there. Certainly very large, very iconic. We have that kind of 2D perspective. What we see here are early humans are trying to depict the environment around them. So they kind of gather in these caves, and they even come back to these caves year after year. Some of these paintings are actually painted over other ones. So really interesting there. It's kind of a place, a pilgrimage, if you will. And so caves are really important, especially to early humans, right? They used them for everything, like I said, from shelter to religious ceremonies, all the way to burial sites. So we absolutely love to get a bit of insight on that. And so with this in mind, we're talking about people returning to these caves or using these caves in a bunch of different ways, right? There's this sense of tradition or ritual within that, which of course is the precursor to a lot of culture itself. So we absolutely love to see that. With this in mind, what do y'all see when you view this piece, and how do you think the elements kind of play into that? Really important questions when we're looking at this work. And so this is a digital illustration, so it is kind of digital paint, if you will. So it's kind of painstakingly drawn on the screen. We talked a little bit about those layers, really allows you to do that absolutely brilliantly. Whether you're using Procreate or any type of application, digital illustration is incredibly popular. Maybe perhaps the most popular medium in digital art today. It's hard to say for sure, but it's certainly very close, right? Truly hope y'all enjoyed today. If y'all did, go check out the original artist, Emerson Miltenberger, doing some really good stuff in the digital illustration. Today we talked about everything from early caves to the effect of color to these three regions here, this unique perspective, the impact of form, layers, so many different things we talked about today. I truly hope y'all enjoyed. My name is Apollo. This was Apollo Art Analysis, and I'll see y'all on the next episode. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you'd like to support our work directly, please check out our Apollo community tokens. Apollo Art Exchange is an ecosystem of art appreciation which elevates artists each and every day. Thanks for listening.